So safety, and this is something that we're going to talk about all the time. Safety, 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 safety. Any psychedelic experience, if you don't feel safe, let somebody know. If you don't feel safe with a facilitator or a person that you're leaning into, walk in the other direction or run. If somebody's trying to squeeze you into something and your body is an absolute no, don't do it. Okay. I've seen time and time again, Cole and I have had to support people in repairing a lot of stuff that was done going into spaces where people were doubting themselves. So make sure you're in a safe space. So what is safety? Now we have all these different contexts, right? And so when I ask somebody, are you feeling safe? And they say yes, I may not know what they're talking about. They said they were safe. I didn't know. And so this is where you start to dial into yourself. Now, about a year ago, I introduced this concept to the Condor Approach, and we had 80 people in this room, and it shut the entire room down because most people didn't know that they weren't actually feeling entirely safe in all aspects of themselves. So I want you to take a deep breath and exhale. If you can breathe like that, if you can take a breath like that, chances are you're in some semblance of safety. If you're not safe, you're not going to be able to take a deep breath like that. Okay, so you can always take it back to your breath. So safety isn't a mere concept. It will profoundly impact everything about your journey, because when we are safe, that is when we heal. That's when we can relax. For us at the Condor Approach, and I want you to write this down, safety is freedom from hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, and pain. Now, I want you to write it down because I want your body to actually remember this context. And there's something to be reading something, saying something, and actually writing it down so that your physicality, so that your body can actually integrate with what's going on. Now, you don't have to agree with this, but you can understand. I want you to understand where I'm coming from with this, okay? And it will make more sense as we move forward. Hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, pain. Now, some people will argue with me and be like, hurt and harm, isn't that the same thing? They're close. They're not the same thing. But when you exclude one of those, somebody else's word space may miss something. Because I can be hurt inside without being physically harmed. Okay, and so there's a difference. Does this make sense? Okay, cool. I call this the 7 attributes of violence. Okay, and you'll start to see a logo like this or something like this as I write things and put things in a portal. 7 AV. I like to call it 7th Avenue, right? And then we have a train stop on the Q train in Brooklyn called 7th Avenue. 7th Avenue, the 7 attributes of violence. 7 attributes: hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, pain. And I will say these things over and over again. Violence is anything that disrupts wholeness. Violence is anything that disrupts wholeness. Wholeness of your physical body, wholeness of your relationships, wholeness of your identity as a human being, wholeness of your family structure, your relationship with your kids. If you get a nick on your skin, your wholeness has been interrupted. And so I'm inviting you to remove judgment from violence. Remove judgment, good or bad. It's violence. Okay? Sometimes violence is necessary. When you see a fly laying in a spider web, what's going to happen? It's violence, right? It's going to be violent. The spider's going to come out, going to grab the fly, is going to inject it with some poison, is going to wrap it up, going to take it down into the web, and it's going to eat, right? And so violence is violence is violence. It's not a good or a bad thing. And I want to remove that context of good or bad from violence. It is violent. Okay? If I have a target and I'm doing archery and I pull back that U and I let that arrow go, it's going to hit the target. It's going to disrupt the integrity of the target as the arrow goes into the target. It is violence. Does this make sense? Okay. Now, I really want this to land with y'all. Remove the judgment from violence and just see it for what it is. Then you can actually get into the what instead of the why. Why did this person hurt me? Why? No, this person did this violent act to me. Am I going to change what I'm doing, or am I going to continue doing what I'm doing with this situation? How am I going to navigate it? Is this helpful? Okay. Now, can you think of any ways that you are unsafe in your life right now, where you're experiencing hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, and pain? Now, deficit, people are like, how is that violent? Well, if I don't have enough and I don't perceive I'm enough, my identity is not whole anymore. And that becomes, it becomes disrupted. Does this make sense? Okay. So if somebody tells me I'm stupid and I start to doubt myself, my idea of myself as a smart person has been interrupted. That is not whole anymore. That is violent. When somebody calls you stupid or ugly or whatever they call you, that's outside of your belief structure of what you are, or your knowledge base of what you are as an individual human being, is disruptive to you as an individual. If I say, oh, those people over there are stupid, I'm actually being violent towards those people. That country is ridiculous. Without understanding or knowing everything that's going on, I am actually being violent towards that situation. And so when we understand these things, we can dive into the self and see where safety is. And this is why we say that violence is not welcome here as far as attacking other people. Now, if somebody's coming at you and you put up a blockade, you're rescuing yourself, right? You're saving yourself from something else. That's perfectly welcome. And attacks on other people, no go here. Cool? Are we good with that? Is this helpful? Is this context helpful? Cool. All right. So this is the lead into what's going on with us here. So anytime there's violence, guess what happens? Trauma. I'm not going to ask you what trauma is, because I'm sure all of you have a different idea and a rendition of what trauma is. At the Condor Approach, trauma is a creative response to violence and disruptions to wholeness. It's a response. And you can live in the response of trauma all the time. Okay, it can become a habit. Trauma is designed within us as we move along. There are foundational spaces, but it's designed as we move along. It's designed into the body, it's designed into the organism. And there are hormones associated with it. There are body postures that are associated with it. There are behaviors that are associated with it. And if we stay in those behaviors and all of those things over and over again, the body fashions itself around the traumatic response. Now, if if a parent comes in a room and smacks a child all the time, the kid's going to get used to doing this, right? This. Or if the parent is disruptive, the kid may lean away from the parent. It's a trauma response. Now, I've seen people with severe scoliosis, severe S-shaped curve in the spine. And I always ask them, who's the parent you spent the most time with? Oh, my mother. Oh, cool. How was your relationship with your mother? Oh, I couldn't stand my mother. Body takes a posture. Okay. And so these are things that I want you to consider. It's not all scoliosis, some scoliosis. These are things you question, you ask when you're doing an intake on yourself or the people around you. Why is my body doing this? I see whole families with their shoulders rolled in like this, right? Closing off the heart, hiding, this type of situation, rounded out back. These are trauma responses that we learn, and we can pass these on to our children. Our children will watch and they will learn to guard themselves in these ways. These can be traumatic responses and things that we live in. Does this make sense? Okay. I want to just start moving you into a space of understanding what we're navigating when we talk about violence, when we talk about safety. There's always a response in the background. Trauma protects and it prepares. Two of those P's, okay? Trauma protects you from, prepares you for violence. And if you're always protecting yourself, you're always in a trauma response, because trauma's coming. Something's coming to disrupt you from wholeness. Does this make sense? Is this landing? Okay, cool. Just want to make sure. Okay. So trauma is the creative response to violence and disruptions to wholeness. Loss, hurt, harm, loss. Now, loss is related to all grief. Anybody that's in a grieving space, they have lost something, or they're perceiving that they're going to lose something. And so there's a disruption in the relationship space. how I relate to something, how I relate to someone. Now, some of you know from following me on social media that one of my greatest friends in the world passed on January 18th. I am. Thank you. You're witnessing a person in a grieving space. Okay. I've known this man since 1985. We went to high school together. I was in a hip hop group called Absolute Value. He was the DJ. My whole life is influenced by this man. And I watched him die a pretty heinous death. In this picture, he's probably around 240 pounds. He was like 80 pounds when he passed. And so my grieving space includes all of the identities I have with him, all of the things we've done together, all of the things we've created together, the music we've done together, the touring we did together. When I didn't see my daughter until she was 2.5 years old. And the first time I saw my daughter, I had a rubber band rope chain that he helped me to make. Right? Like he's built into so many aspects of me. And so when he passed, everything was disintegrated with that. And so my body is acclimating, my psyche, my emotional complex is acclimating to the world without Dom, physically, right? Like I know him ideologically and the concept of him, but I'm grieving that. And so the loss process is a space where I am, every time, like I just looked at this picture and immediately, because I'm grieving that space, I can't pick up the phone and reach out and call him. And so this is where we start to understand that loss triggers grief. Grief is a trauma response. And so when you're working in psychedelic spaces and you come back new, your family may be grieving you the way you were before. You may be grieving the relationship you had with other things and people, the old shit that you stuck to, the limiting beliefs that you had, the structures around your emotions and stuff. You may be stuck in those spaces. And then when you have a psychedelic experience, it shakes things up and it's like, I'm brand new. And it's like, okay, this is great. And then a couple of weeks later, the grief sets in because you have now moved into a different space. And so grieving is a natural thing. We have to become new. We are always becoming new. And there are micro griefs, macro griefs, and extreme griefs. This is an extreme grief. Big deal for me. And does this make sense? Just want to check in, just want to dial in. Is this helpful? Okay, this context is very important because in the psychedelic space, people talk a lot about what kind of death? Ego death. Okay, your ego is a structure that's there to keep you safe and have all of these foundational things. And when people are looking to kill their egos off, you're going to grieve. Okay, and your ego is going to grieve, and the other relationships in your life are going to grieve. This is a violent space. It's violent because it disrupts something. Capiche? Capiche. Good. Cool. That's Italian. All right. So my clicker is spazzing out. All right. So the importance of safety, right? Remember, safety is a moment of now thing. It's often confused with security, which is a future projection of safety, right? Security is a future projection of safety. I will be safe next week. I have this insurance policy, so if something happens, I will be safe later. Meanwhile, right now, I'm on fire because I'm not feeling safe. How many people have experienced this? Thank you for sharing. Me too. Okay. I have not been outside of the space of looking for security while I am in momentary unsafe conditions. But yeah, I'm still grinding because I'm going to do all of these things. But right now, I'm not safe. It is very moment of now. So when I ask you, are you safe? I'm not talking about next week. I'm talking about right now. Are you safe? And this is one thing that I want you to all be able to check in, these 3 words. Am I safe? And ask it out loud and see what your body tells you. And this is a space that people get very dissonant in. They don't ask themselves. Walk into a room and something feels weird. Ask yourself, am I safe? And I take a deep breath. Am I safe? At that Condor Approach in February, somebody said, can you ask that? I was like, yes, please ask that. Am I safe? Are you safe? Are you safe? Oh, I thought somebody asked me something. Okay, cool. So what is vulnerability? This is a word that gets thrown around right now in all of the coaching spaces online, vulnerability coaches. What's vulnerability? Open heart. What else? Room for possibilities, exposure, authenticity, connection, courage to be seen and known. Perfect. For us at the Condor Approach, vulnerability is being open with possibility. Sincere said, it is being open with possibility. Vulnerability is not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It is open with possibility. Please stop judging your language. Let that go. Good or bad, right or wrong, it's open with possibility. And so possibility for change, possibility for growth, for connection, for fun, for pleasure, for learning, for mutuality, for expansion. It's also possibility for the 7 attributes of violence: hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, pain. You are open. And so who knows what's going to come in? And so this is why vulnerability can feel unsafe, because you can be hurt. But if you're only closed off to prevent hurt, you're still preventing yourself from all of the awesome from coming in. And learning how to create filters and boundaries for yourself is tremendously important. And this is because possibility is always uncertain. Certainty is security for the future. All I have is right now. And right now, I know that I am safe in this very moment. Am I going to be safe? I don't know. Yesterday morning, I was here teaching in the morning, teaching the coaches. And before that, I smashed my head wide open. Right? I have a laceration on my head. I was in my closet. I dropped my watch on the floor, bent down to pick it up, and smashed my head. Didn't know I was going to be unsafe. Didn't know there was going to be violence, but there was. So there's always uncertainty with possibility. And that possibility, what happened yesterday, left me open for a teaching moment and for an experience in my life, and for me to have a very huge opening with my wife, who held amazing space for me as I dissociated into some really weird spaces yesterday. This is open for possibility. And if we close ourselves off to just pain, we leave ourselves closed off to everything else. If we close ourselves off to just pleasure, we leave ourselves closed to pain as well. And this is a part of the full spectrum of our lives. The Condor Approach is a methodology. This is not a law space, not a religion, not a cult. This is not a space of indoctrination. It is a methodology. And we use the methodology of the Condor Approach to integrate things in our lives. It's a tool belt. You have all of these tools that you use on a day-to-day basis, and we move through a psychedelic-informed lens because it works. And there are a lot of people that are leaning into utilizing psychedelics, and they're not integrating with intention. Integration is something that's not optional, but it's something that's ongoing all the time. And if we don't do it with intention, we get what we get. So the question is, can you coach yourself, and can you be coached by somebody else? From our vantage point at the Condor Approach, coaching is eliciting greatness from another person. It is supporting another person, bringing out the greatness in them. And so if you can coach somebody else, can you coach yourself? Bring the greatness out of you. Be coachable and have fun. If you fall out of having fun, things can get really, really challenging. So bring yourself back to fun at every instance that you possibly can, y'all.